Now we're moving on to a character who certainly has made headlines for the better part of a decade. He has had a Ewan McGregor film made of his story, told the tale of how this one man brought down Barings Bank, Britain's oldest investment bank.
Well, Nick, Leeson became a household name in 1995 when he spectacularly racked up trading losses of $1.4 billion, twice the value of the whole of Barings Bank, driving it into immediate insolvency.
Well, I had the chance to meet the man and started by asking him whether rogue trading is a bigger problem than people think.
A huge need for success. I had a huge fear of failure, very much a type 1 personality, and wanted to be in control and thought that I could control and adapt to situations, and ultimately failed. So, you know, I don't think it's something that confronts somebody on an everyday basis in the financial markets. It's a small group of people who might be prone to get involved in this sort of activity, but a lot of the times, and a lot of the times where you see the rogue trading scandals that have existed over the last few years, they start through mistake.
So, in your opinion, I guess since the 2008 global financial crisis, since the crash, do you think that people really have learned their lessons since 2008? Was that the wake-up call that people were really waiting for?
Well, everybody would hope so. You know, I think things have, over the last few years, we've seen so many different scandals that you have to believe, or you have to hope, that there's an end to it. Unfortunately, I think everything goes through like property markets as well, you go through a boom and bust sort of cycle, and you know, banks very quickly go back to making an awful lot of money, and they forget some of the controls that should be in place.
On a personal note, what are your greatest regrets?
Look, I regret everything that happened during that period, because you know, it's not what I wanted to happen. I was somebody who had a huge need for success, a huge fear of failure, and you know, I failed on one count, and you know, I will always be remembered for my biggest failure, which for me personally is always being remembered for my biggest embarrassing period, which is very difficult to come to terms with. That right now I'm the sum of all of my experiences as well, and you know, there were some good prior to that, and you know, there was a 5-year period that was exceptionally, well, 9-year period when you include prison as well, which was exceptionally tough, but you know, that's part of me now.
Since the Western capitalist system is so focused on that bottom line, it doesn't always take into account all of its stakeholders. Do you believe the system is fundamentally flawed?
Well, it's flawed to the extent that you know, it's the pursuit of money, and it's an extremely competitive environment, competitive on an individual by individual perspective, firm to firm, and by financial marketplace to financial marketplace. It's all about doing things faster, better, quicker, making more money, and you know, the problem is that, you know, the fundamental attribution error is alive and kicking in financial markets, where, you know, everybody believes that something is going to go wrong at some time in the future, but as long as it doesn't happen to them, it's okay. And you know, we've seen through the last crisis that it's not okay.
So you've written a couple books, you're doing the interview circuit, but would you ever consider going back to the world of finance?
I don't think the finance world would ever accept me back. I think my story serves as a cautionary tale for everybody who works in the world of finance. And you know, I have a friend who runs a bank in Germany, and he uses my story to explain to new recruits in his organisation that he expects you to make mistakes, but what he doesn't expect you to do is to hide them. And you know, I suppose that encapsulates my story in a very small number of words, because I hid my mistakes and didn't ask for help and advice when I should have.